crazy. California being the biggest of offenders in this. And people put up with it for a little bit. So now you've got South America and majority of the small countries in the lower ends of South America joining together. Mexico and Central America, not so much, especially not Mexico, North America, Canada. They don't want to have anything to do with this movement.
Did we finalize the Canada-America thing? Because like I said, I think that the lines are blurred enough there.
Well, they may start joining themselves, but they don't get behind the Lexington coalition.
Okay, all right, yes.
Like the Brazilian government basically is following the outline plan of the Lexington coalition, which has turned into a large movement.
For any standard American watching, I was in Canada recently, and if you've ever been there, a lot of their politics and money-wise and whatever else base a lot off of us. And so just about all of the newspapers I saw were all about the debt ceiling, and there was a lot about 9/11 memorials. I mean, they're not U.S., but they're closely enough tied. And I wouldn't call them the U.S. addict. I'm not going to say anything derogatory, but there's a lot of intermixing with cultures and such that it wouldn't be hard to fathom the lines being blurred about those two countries. And considering we're further along in the storyline, we're going to have a lot of different alliances and coalitions and whatnot. It's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, this is something too that I don't know if the average American is really too aware of. I follow a few daily vloggers from Canada, and a lot of their comments will be people saying, "Why are you so interested in what the hell's happening in Occupy New York? It's not even your country, blah, blah." And they respond every time with, "You don't understand how tied Canada and the U.S. are politically and culturally." So yeah, they definitely follow what we're doing, and I think majority of countries in the world follow what is happening in the U.S. We just really don't pay attention to them. Or at least what we do is just through such a heavy filter that we don't really get the true message. Anyhow, so during this time, one of the things that happens is Sao Paulo, Brazil, which I think is the current capital. If that's why I chose it.
I think so. We'll look it up.
But I'm pretty sure it's the current capital. If not, yell at me in comments. They set that up as the Southern Republic. The outline from Brazil calls for multiple capitals, using a lot of new technology to institute the Congress. What they're calling, what the Lexington Coalition starts coining in their videos is the true American Congress. Using like video conferencing to get the Northern and Southern Congresses together, things like that. Then we step ahead right into 2014, and 2014 is just a horrible year. And if you think things couldn't have gotten any worse, they did. So as we said, California is one of these big offenders as far as the taxation of its people. And this is just a little bit of poetic licensing. We know California is one of the most populous. It's the largest state. They already have a lot of towns and municipalities in the state that were on the verge of bankruptcy at the beginning of this whole thing. Cost of living is very high out there. Naturally, they shunt that cost off to their citizens. And this is where a little bit of the epic story of Block 1 starts kicking in. During this time, and we're tying in things from other story universes under our production umbrella. As you know, this is Splintered Humanity Productions, and what we're concentrating on in these videos is the Splintered Humanity Universe, which is a game world, designed around pen and paper, RPG, and we have other little projects that go on with that. And one of them is Ragnarok with a 6-string, designed by Hobbit here. And it's a very cool Norse world, and it's got that metal feel to it. And one of the things that I came up with today is, what if we had a precipitating event that had to do with protest music? So, Sacramento, California, they head back into these Occupy movements. this one being the largest of its kind in the country, due to the taxation, B, it's the middle of August in California, and people are pissed off anyway because it's hot.
Cranky.
Very. So, during this protest, during one day of the protest, this large truck shows up and starts setting up a stage. Yeah. And the fans start noticing who it is, and it is the current punk metal explosion Ragnarok with a six string. Who are a virtual band. And if you can think of like Gorillaz, where the members are real people playing, but their stage personas don't actually exist. They're holographic projections. Similar in this case, where the characters are actually being pulled from our Ragnarok with a six-string world into this world to make a point. So as this mysterious stage gets erected in the State House lawn in historic downtown Sacramento, which I've actually visited, it is a very beautiful place, and it kind of, I die a little inside thinking of what happens. So this band sets up, and they start going with their protest punk.
Yeah, so just to compare this was an idea I had because
it's fitting. It's epic. It's scope makes Block Zero epic. This is really one of the big precipitating events in Block Zero.
So Ray can decide whether or not he wants to edit this part out, but it's an idea that I think is completely possible with the current climate and the current Occupy setups. Music has always been a very powerful communicator. And
I'm big on this considering Tom Morello has just started showing up at like every Occupy everywhere in the last couple of days.
A lot of people we've seen so far. We've seen Tom Morello, Danny Glover.
Penn Jillette has been at New York for like the last few days.
Penn Jillette. What was it? One of the other ones we saw on Wall Street was
Mike Myers.
Mike Myers. That's the one.
A lot of celebrities have started coming out.
So, but anyways, so one of the lyrical similarities between Ragnarok with a six string that's going to show up in Sacramento and current present day Rise Against. If you listen to a lot of their stuff, it's against the establishment, that kind of punk, and they've got the same kind of following. And as we expect in this time frame, a lot of people that are going to be following these Occupy movements are people that have done it before, and then the younger generation that knows about it and believes in the power of it will be there as well. So it'll be a band that a lot of people recognize and can sympathize with in the meaning and, like I said, the lyrical base. So once that starts up, as you can imagine, all hell is going to break loose.
Yes, they show up, they start rocking out, and when you think about what's going to happen when...
Think about a really, really, really big mosh pit.
Yeah, and when you've got a climate in this country where a lot of the standing army has just been decreased. And I mean, you've got the National Guard, but in a state like California, with protests like this going on, a large force, in my opinion, is going to be mobilized to Los Angeles.
Correct.
It's just such a vast area when you think of Los Angeles County. Like, not even just, because Los Angeles, the city itself, is huge.
Yep.
But you don't think, anybody who's ever been there will understand that LA itself is not the only entity. You've got Hollywood right there, you've got Venice Beach, you've got all these little communities strung right together that are not independent in any way, other than, an area code. So the National Guard for California is probably going to be very busy in Southern California, especially along the border. I mean, let's just face where they're going to be busy. They're not going to be too worried about Sacramento, and granted, there will probably be some guardsmen there. But this little mosh pit, this little concert gets a little out of control with over 100,000 people. And it's, even among us, we're leaving this as anyone's guess as to what actually kicks off this event. We know that there's the music, there's the vibe in the air of just fed up, but what event actually kicks it off, whether it's a person getting injured, shots fired, anything, something kicks this off. We're going to leave that to you guys, basically.
It's one of those shot heard around the world situations where nobody knows how it started and nobody ever will, that kind of situation.
Great theories, but...
Yeah.
Needless to say, this crowd descends upon Sacramento in the middle of a California dry August heat and starts torching things and flipping cars. And yeah, that pretty much takes that city off of the map.
Pretty much.
At least in terms of going downtown to, go to the shops for a while. So we have the governor leave. He takes off out of Sacramento and heads to LA. The protest follows. The violence starts following. And
just with at the speed of communication, when we say that the occupation is going to follow, yes, we are talking about people from there are going to move to LA as well.
Start traveling south.
But at the same time, like we just said, with the speed of information, that information is going to get there very quickly. Somebody's going to find out that the governor's moving to LA, and whatever was already in LA, whether it be an occupation movement or beginning of riots or whatever it is, that's just going to increase exponentially with the knowledge that the governor's trying to escape their situation instead of addressing it.
I mean, we even see this sort of situation today with the current Occupy movement, where you can wait until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, whenever the news, I don't even watch regular news when it comes on, and hope that they mentioned a little bit of filler piece about what's going on, or you could be getting those updates seconds streaming, live streaming, literally nanoseconds after it's happening. And the same thing is going to continue in this world. The tweets are going to head out, governor on the move, protest on the move, and people are going to respond.
Yep.
Just like they are now. And so in LA, when things start going batshit crazy there, the National Guard is brought out as a peacekeeping force, as a police force. Except that a good amount of them, and this is something that I believe would be true, and I'd like to think this is a little bit of human decency left out there in America, but that a lot of these guardsmen would just surrender and just not even choose to fire on their citizens.
And you also got to take into account, once again, you roll back a little ways and realize that a lot of, not the National Guard, but the Army and the armed forces in general have just been, taken off and honorably just discharged, given papers, go away. So they already know that the states and the federal don't have the dedication to them as they did before. So they don't know they have that backup. And they're not going to be as dedicated to the service, that, especially if they don't agree with it 100%. So this is completely justifiable that they wouldn't take action that they were directed to.
This ends up coming in, and I'm just checking dates now, almost a week later, where the Lexington Coalition releases one of its final videos. It's the second to last video that they end up releasing as the Lexington Coalition, urging all American citizens to start taking up arms and considering themselves the new Minutemen.
Yep.
And that they need to start defending. And this precipitates, this whole event in California precipitates the Second Civil War, where you start having this amazing breakdown in state government and the people where they just can't take it, and they just basically, you're either going to fix it or we're going to start taking over. And in certain areas, like along the east and west coast, things do get mopped up a little bit quicker. People don't riot quite as heavy in certain areas. The northern east coast, New England, I've kind of left not so much a safe zone, but a not destroyed zone. Just because I know from experience living here that in times of crisis, people do come together. And with how packed in the people are in this area, I think that they would, once things got their point across, they would start banding together to start rebuilding a society much faster than, say, the Midwest, Ohio, Illinois, where some cases your nearest neighbor is 10 miles down the road. And this goes into a story that I've written and posted. I believe I put this up on Facebook under the Splintered Humanity Productions page. And I'm not sure if it's up on the site. The site's kind of been in a shambles as it's redesigning, and I have a friend trying to work on code for me when he can in between jobs. but 2015 is the story, and it kind of outlines a tale of a brother and sister caught in the turmoil of all this Second Civil War, where they start off in Rhode Island and are trying to make it to California to find family. And lots of bad things happen once they hit the Midwest. It's not the best environment for them. And during this time, you have the early rise of trade alliances coming up. So once this war starts kicking up, the American Congress, what we know now as the American Congress, retreats and hides. They pull off to the bunkers. I forget the name of I'll have to look it up at some point, but there is actually a hotel where the U.S. Congress has bunkers in the mountain behind the hotel. And that's basically what they do. They lock themselves away. They have enough communication to get to the outside world, and they sit in there and try to come up with a plan to fix everything. Within this time, they emerge with the backing of the Chinese government and announce the beginnings of the Asian American Union, which is a trade federation initially started with Canada, America, Japan, and China. And other countries start joining in as we get into further blocks, as we head towards Block 1. But right now that kind of solidifies, and the EU heavily solidifies its Central European and Western European ties and starts shoring in some Eastern European countries as it notices others leaving.
So, just a thing to bring up, and correct me, edit me, however, whatever. But when you see those trade federations that we're talking about, you got to think of how the occupied situations have been going now. Anything that's going to happen in the U.S. is going to spread. I mean, you've seen the riots in Rome, the riots in a lot of other European countries that spread based off of this idea, and we expect similar things to that. So now you've got governments that are, on the defensive. But one of the things that is always worldwide that doesn't discriminate, especially in a capitalist capitalism situation, are the companies. There's so many major corporations that are worldwide, that have connections worldwide, that have a line of communication, instant and on an intranet degree, private, so that they can make all the communications and say, okay, well, this government's going to do this, we need to make this policy. So those conglomerations are already set up and in a fantastic place to take advantage of a lack of government control. So we definitely see those as stepping forward and taking advantage of that.
It's one thing that as a sci-fi author, and I know this is an emotion resonated through many different sci-fi authors out there, and it's talked about by someone who actually isn't a sci-fi author but is a science author about sci-fi, and that's Dr. Michio Kaku, who talks about the different classes of societies and how currently we are at a class 0 society. And the only thing that's going to make us progress is globalization. And most sci-fi writers understand this, and that's why in this day and age, a lot of the sci-fi coming out is about globalization. And in our world, this is the first steps towards it. But I'm a bigger fan of psychology and sociology, and know that the human animal will never become that big of a tribe on its own, or I don't feel that way. So,
or with any kind of ease.
With any kind of ease. So these trade federations are a first step towards globalization for the corporate masters. It doesn't necessarily work, and we'll get into that in the next video with Block 1, but it is their attempt.
Yeah, so just a reference, just for all the stuff we're saying, you always want to give you something to relate back to. One of the big and very detailed worlds, realities, however you want to say it, is the Ender's Game, Ender's Shadow, all that other stuff. Orson Scott Card, fantastic writer, and goes into a lot of detail. If you're interested in any of this stuff, read Ender's Game so you have a background. That's the original book, and then go into Shadow of the Hegemony, or Shadow of the Hegemon. That goes into how different countries and different worlds get into wars and are finally solidified, but it takes in a lot of outside forces, and by this time we've already reached, space travel capacity. So I mean, it would take something to realize that, one world is not the only prize to actually get something solidified like that, which is, of course, where we're eventually going.
Block Zero kind of just centers around the major changes to Earth heading forward, and I'll give you a little bit of a foreshadowing. In Block 1, Earth is made uninhabitable. That's actually the very end of Block 1, so this is kind of setting the stage for a final push towards a golden age of humanity. Whether it gets there or not before the end is something that you guys will have to determine.
Speaking of which, anybody who wants to contribute, please let us know.
Yeah.
If you think something will work,
Some
something wouldn't
ideas
work.
this way.
Yes.
Yep.
Comments, emails. We got plenty of sites, plenty of.
And that's what I was just
media
about to get into, because that is about all we have on Block Zero. I mean, the ending of Block Zero is the creation of the early creation of these trade unions. They start coming into their own at the very beginning of Block 1, which starts in about 2030 and runs up until 2150. And almost none of the dates are by chance or just random guess. Most of the dates have significant meaning to at least me or someone in the design group. 2150, the end of Block 1 being one of those for me. Where I like astrology and stuff like that, and 2150 is the ending of the age, and heading into the next stage of enlightenment. So it was fitting for me to destroy the Earth and step forward into the cosmos.
An evil necessity took place.
Yeah, a little bit of evil Deus Ex Machina there. But as we've said a couple times, the entire Splintered Humanity Universe is written under a Creative Commons license. And if you're not sure what a Creative Commons license is, I urge you to head over to creativecommons.org. We'll put some links down here. And find out a little bit more about it. Because in my mind, as a designer and as a writer, Creative Commons is one of the few things that lets you control your work. I still have my beliefs, and I believe copyright is broken. Copyright law is horrible right now, in my opinion, and Creative Commons gives us a way around that. And one of the big things that it does gives us is the ability for you to input back to the story. You can do that through comments on these videos, comments on the production company channel, or directly to my mailbox, sebron@splinteredhumanity.com. If you want to reach any of us, I'm sebron@splinteredhumanity.com.
Actuator.
And Maddie was epic. And we'll probably be back pretty soon with a Block 1 video and or a little featurette on our other world at Splintered Humanity Productions, Ragnarok with the 6th String. Not to be confused with the virtual metal band Ragnarok with the 6th String within the Splintered Humanity world.
Not that there's any hint.
We're just tricky like that.
So anyway, yeah. Anything? What I'm hoping for is some of the visual stuff. We really like trying to come up with thought-provoking and image-provoking ideas. We've already been talking about how did you want to describe Sacramento and the burning fields that you were talking about?
Yeah, this is actually a story from a little bit of real life experience. When I was out in that area, I've been to Sacramento and to historic downtown, and I've been there in the October, in the fall, where the area around the city isn't so much suburb; it almost goes directly to rural, and you've got a lot of orchards, which in California means wildfires. And I had been having a conversation with one of our artists from New Mexico, and she had mentioned how she loves gloomy days and how I talked about wanting to move to Oregon or Washington. I love it up there. And the closest I've been to that area, I've been Sacramento, and I had made the joke, and it's funny because it fits in back here, that while it wasn't gloomy there, there's definitely an air of apocalypse. Because you'll be sitting there and it's a beautiful night out, beautiful dust out, and this the entire horizon is ringed by red, fiery red and black smoke. It is just a sight that, if you've never seen it, you have to see. But if there's something out there, if you guys have any little bit that you want to contribute, storyline, suggestion, you want to Photoshop up some images, some protest signs, supporting the coalition, the Lessening Coalition, head right over there. You know, send it to our inboxes. We'll gladly appreciate it. And mention you on here. The only thing that we do ask with our license is that you reattribute and say that this was created by Splintered Humanity Productions. And that's what you're basing your work on.
Pretty easy.
That and that it's not for profit. But if it's good enough, we'll probably be talking to you about it anyway. I would actually hope that if you are going to create something for Splintered Humanity, give me some contact information and a name you want to attribute it under, because part of our license is your work also has to be Creative Commons licensed. That doesn't mean that you can't restrict it as far as you want. Use whatever version of the license you want to use. But if you're just going to send us something with no license, we've got to kind of figure out who to give credit to. And this is just like with our main title, that is forever going to have to be attributed to the amazing Gina Truleo down in New Mexico, who did the work for us. And any logo that we create for the universe in the future is going to be marked as based on the work of. And I'd like to see that for some of you guys. If you come up with a great story for a video, or a great script for a video, or an image that spawns a story, keep in mind it will be forever immortalized as inspired by the work of. I think that
Good
That wraps us up. Yeah.
pretty much wraps us up for the first dev panel. Thanks for watching, everybody.
There you go.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more information coming up on the Splintered Humanity Universe, and hopefully I can get this one aside for a short sit down on Ragnarok with the 6 string, so you'll have some information on RW6S as well. Links down below. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.